Um, this is going to be different, I think. Um, there's this thought I've got in my head because of what's happening to me and because of other things I've been writing about, and and the thought was that there's no stepping back from the moment of death. So we don't usually talk about death, but I need to because I've been told too. I mean, I've had heart disease for yonks, but 2 years ago, my cardiologist told me that there was nothing more he could do. They'd sort of sawed me open more times than you can. You just can't only do that so many times, and he said that I had congenital heart failure, and that it was going to progress only in one direction, and that I would slowly die. And that's a little bit hard to take, and it's a bit hard to talk about, and it's a bit hard to think about, but you do think about it quite a bit. And so, but you sort of try and keep yourself alive. And my wife, my lovely wife, Lily Fu, she's been astonishing. She does stuff every day, every single day to try and keep me alive. And she's tries to stop me from doing things that she thinks are going to kill me. But but so but the other thing about all this is that I've been trying to write this book about our time at the homestead, at Orowara Homestead. And I've got a lot of writing done, but I keep on interrupting it with the other thing that's going on in my life and in New Zealand, and that is the whole business of separatism and whatever that's beginning to take place in New Zealand. And I can see that we're going to have a country that people are going to want to leave rather than come to. We just are. And people believe lies. They tell themselves lies. They institutionalize lies. So, especially the New Zealand left-wing government, but whatever. It's not about politics, Dennis. This is about life and death. And so in amongst all that, and in amongst this writing I've been doing about the homestead and our history there, which was grossly misrepresented by people like Angus Gordon and that idiot woman that writes for Stuff and whatever. And the thing about all that is that I wanted to try and correct all that, but it's kind of difficult. But in amongst the process of doing that, I got a call one day. That story had just been in Stuff, and I had written a thing I'd put on Facebook about the sort of the life and times of us at the homestead. It was, I don't know, about 5 pages, I suppose. And sort of I can't remember how many words, but it was there. It's still there. And I got a phone call. I got two important phone calls, and one of them was from a person up there in Hawke's Bay who I respect. He gave me a piece of information which was vital to all of this, and but it was something I kind of knew, but it was good to have reinforcement of it from somebody who knew, and that piece of information was about the sort of proposed demolition of the homestead. And I kind of wondered why. And then he's talking about back a long way back in sort of in really in the early 70s. And so then we came along in 77 and went through our time there and struggled every day with it really, and so much of my history. It was half of my working life, and I mean I got into sculpture there, and and I started to see myself as an artist in a more practical way than most people do, I think. Um, and um, and I got into ballooning, married again, and had 2 children. It's all really important stuff at the homestead. But nobody in power, because there were people who had power over me, they didn't seem to have any respect for any of that. And so then I got this other phone call, and so that was like Christmas 2021, and the phone call simply said, Christopher Rollison. I said, is that Dennis Hall? And I said, yeah. And he said, Christopher Rollison didn't die in a tractor accident. He committed suicide. So then, as somebody who's sort of waiting to die himself because the doctor's sort of given him, I don't know, a bit of a death sentence, didn't tell me how long it would be, but it's getting close now, you see. And I'm not going to be able to complete all the writing that I've started, so I've got to do this. I've got to tell this story here. And the story, I suppose, was, I mean, I know what's going to happen to me. It could be, I got a thing from the doctor the other day. I'd take to the social welfare department to get a sort of a bit of help from them. I'm on a pension, and it just a piece of paper that said, terminal. When your sentences, when you get your death sentence written down like that, you kind of take it seriously at a different level, because I mean, I'm alive every day, so it's quite difficult to contemplate death. But it's sort of probably important to try, and so it makes you start thinking about the deaths of others. And I sort of spent a lot of time, although some people close to me might not think so. I spent a lot of time contemplating the death of first of all, my first wife, Marina, and she committed suicide. And I've got this lovely picture of her that I just found. You won't be able to see it very well, but there she is at Port Said, and that was like a couple of months before I met her. She was 14 years old, gorgeous woman, and here's me in the same batch of pictures that I've seemed to have found. There's me sitting there. Not sure who that is behind, and that's my eldest son, Rick, little baby. He's a long time ago, and so she committed suicide, and it was just so sad that she did that, and she was trying to reach out to people and probably struggling to do that. So I don't know the pros and cons of why she did that, but I do know that once she made the decision, she hung herself. Once you made the decision, it's gone, burger. Can't step back from it. So you can't. I sort of said you can't step back from the moment of death. You can't step back after the moment of death. It's a no change, a decision you cannot change once you've done it. And then there was Jonathan. Young Jonathan. How was he? 14 years old. He was the same age as Marina in that photograph. Very bloody sad. Once he had made the decision to do that, I mean, there was sort of, at that time, I thought a lot about that decision. The process of making that decision that you're going to kill yourself, and some people would labour over that decision for days or weeks or whatever. They would contemplate it for a long time, and then they might enter that moment quite cold-bloodedly in the end, and just decide that the end needs to come. And so, but you're actually making a decision at a time in your life when you're extremely, extremely unhappy. Um, and I see, I'm not unhappy at all, really. So I'm very lucky. I'm contemplating the same thing as they did, but in a different way. It's kind of used to the idea. Um, and I think that I don't. The problem is that this man had said to me that Christopher Robertson committed suicide, right? And so I went, really, is that true? Can I believe that? I mean, obviously, when people told me Marina had and Jonathan had, I mean, you knew that it was a fact that he had. But I mean, the folklore around Christopher Robertson and the homestead was that he had died in a tractor accident. So I decided to go and have a look at his death. Because why would somebody do that? Why would somebody call me out of the blue and not identify himself and tell me that some person that, is part of the folklore is having a tractor accident actually committed suicide? What he's doing is contradicting all of the common sort of wisdom about what actually did happen or didn't. So it's either a flat out lie or it's a plea of some sort to try and get a story told. So, and I mean, if I knew who he was, it might have made me easier for me to sort of decide. So I waited a while, but anyway, not very long, a couple of weeks. It was on my mind, I couldn't get rid of it. And so I decided to go and get his death certificate. It's a relatively straightforward thing to do. So bingo, I got the death certificates in my computer. I've talked about it before. On here, on this, in a video, but this this particular video is going to be more important. And so, and the death certificate said he died of asphyxiation. So then my brain goes, well, had a tractor accident, apparently rolled a tractor over a bank, and died of asphyxiation. Seriously? And so, and the date of his death was there. I think it was the 29th of March or something, 1953. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It might have been the 19th. I don't know. It's got a 9 on it, I think. And so, but that's not important. The actual, moment, because but his death is very important. And and so then, I kind of realised from the death certificate and the fact that it had an accident, there would have been a coroner's report. So I went and got the coroner's report. And the coroner's report is so full of holes it just doesn't matter. And so these people have covered up. The people in the homestead got together and covered up his suicide and made it look like an accident. Now, so, that sort of opens the door to a possible murder, of course. But, I didn't believe for a minute that he committed a murder, or that anybody committed a murder against him, if you know what I mean. But the thing about that is that as time went by through this sort of process in the last sort of 9 months or so, 8 months, I had 2 other phone calls. And I asked myself, why did they choose to call me and talk to me about Christopher Robertson's suicide? But the second phone call was from a lady who I have connected with now, and I know who she is and whatever. And she said that Christopher shot himself in the yard there somewhere, get the impression it was up by the stable somewhere. And so the thing about, the big glaring sort of anomaly in the coroner's report is that there are 3 statements. And what I've done is I took that coroner's report and I took it to bits, line by line. It's all written down. So it's in a file in my computer, which I've decided that I probably need to make public before I die myself. And in that coroner's report, there are 3 statements. One from this guy named Halford, who is a staff member, who seemed to be sort of, he's the one, his report is the one that put the picture together, which I kind of realised was a made up picture, and that was supported by two other statements, one by a doctor and one by a policeman. And the thing is about that is that apparently all three of those people, Halford was first on the scene, it would appear, and sent somebody off or rushed off himself to call a doctor and the police. Well, the doctor arrived first, and so he made a statement, and obviously, so the Halford statement was made on the day. The policeman and the doctor's statement was made a month later, or 29 days later, in the coroner's court, and it seems as signed on the day of the coroner's hearing. And basically, Halford says, as the person first there, that he couldn't. He could see Christopher's face because the tractor's wheel, side of the wheel, was on his chest. The tractor wheel was on his chest, thereby crushing him and preventing him from breathing and causing him to be asphyxiated. The doctors, in his report, he said that Halford was lying face down with the tractor on his back. In the coroner's report, for anybody who wants to go and get a copy of the coroner's report, it's there. But what I've done is take that apart line by line, the whole coroner's report, and but then with a bit more research about I've taken it apart line by line, and to me it's as clear as a bell that there's some kind of jack-up went on somewhere. But the first layer of that jack-up was in that house with his mother and a group of other people. His mother, his wife, Halford, the pilot of this top dressing plane that was he was supposed to have been watching when he had the accident, and because he put a story in the paper the same day. That was published the same day as the accident, so that was sorted out pretty quick. And in the morning, when all this happened, and so then it's all there. People, I'm going to publish it. People can go read it and whatever, and make your own thoughts up about that. But so then, of course, I decided also to have a good look at Christopher's history, because Christopher's history, as it is told now in Hawke's Bay, is quite simple. Christopher Rollison, what do you know about him? He died in a tractor accident. Well, it doesn't do him justice. It really, really doesn't do him justice. It just doesn't. Now, look, I'm a bit of a student of World War II, and anything that comes along that is got information about World War II, I read it and I watch all those bloody stories on the History Channel and whatever, often repeated, using the same clips and whatever. And I've seen a clip of that. I would think that I watched it and I thought it could be Christopher. The thing about Christopher is that at 14 years old, and it could be 13, could be 15, but I understand it's 14. In 1937 or 8, could have been the beginning of 37, end of 37, beginning of 38, whatever. They sent him off to the UK to go to Sandhurst. Now, this part of his history is not discussed, known, or talked about, or considered, it seems to me, in the life of Christopher Rollison, and it fucking should be, because otherwise not doing him justice. And so, this is going to take at least half an hour, but basically what I'm talking about is that sort of moment, that decision moment of death, if you're deciding to do it yourself, and the things that play into that. Now, so as for the things that played into what happened to Christopher Rollison, you've got to consider his military record, right? Now, so I'll try not to interrupt myself. So basically 14 years old, off to Sandhurst Military College, military school in the UK. You've got to be a bit special to go there as well. And he pops out of that, and so the war's just coming up. 1937, 38, everybody knew that there was going to be a world war. And it was obvious Hitler was sort of already having a go at some of the people in his neighbourhood. And there was that general insanity associated with Nazism and all the sort of ceremonial horseshit that goes with that. And, the persecution of the Jews was well underway. It's very interesting that a race of otherwise reasonable people would decide that one race in amongst them needs to be killed. But, over time in history, people have done that. This group of people here have got to die. And, they've just got to hate each other enough. Well, they've got to just hate the other people enough. And so there's Christopher, and in that environment, he goes to he goes through military school, and he enlists in the Grenadier Guards. The Grenadier Guards, they're an elite regiment. They just are. They're the people that look after Buckingham Palace, amongst other things. They're the Queen's Guard, and so and he becomes a tank commander. Now, a tank commander, what's a tank commander? Well, a tank commander, I believe, a tank commander is the guy that commands the tank. And in amongst all the tanks, there will be a tank commander that commands all the tank commanders. But, he's not the guy driving the tank. He's the guy with his head sticking out the top telling the driver what to do. And so they go ashore. Christopher Rolleston, who is only remembered for his death on a tractor, he was one of the ones who went ashore around D-Day because he fought in the Battle of Normandy. The Battle of Normandy was what happened immediately after the landing at Normandy, at D-Day, one of the biggest operations ever. And he's a part of it with a fucking tank and in charge of men. And I understand from what I read that he might have become a major. He was a lieutenant, when he started, because, of course, you come out of Sandhurst with the title of lieutenant. Why aren't people talking about that? And so it just blows me away that all he's remembered for is a fucking tractor accident, you people. Wake your ideas up. And so there he is in the midst of one of the biggest and the most amazing and historic battles of all time, trundling around in a bloody tank with a whole tank regiment that was, and he fought his way into Belgium. He, with this whole Grenadier Guard sort of battalion of tanks, fought their way through the Battle of Normandy, when the Germans were still sort of fighting back hard, defeated them, pushed them out of the way, battled his way into Belgium, and helped to liberate Belgium, and then liberate Brussels. I mean, why aren't the people of Central Hawke's Bay talking about the pride associated with their son who did that? What is it that's going on up there that they... I know they believe a lot of bullshit about me, but I think it's astonishing that they believe bullshit about him. And so Christopher, and so then he sort of battled. You can go and look it up on the bloody Grenadier Guards website. I have. He was there, and his father, from what I can make out, was in the Coldstream Guards at an earlier time in World War One. What is it about Hawke's Bay that they have no pride in that, and they want to just consign a guy to a tractor accident? Fuck off. And so they fought their way all the way into Germany, those guys, and survived. Obviously some of them would have died, but Christopher Rolleston, he would have seen a lot of death and destruction along the way. he would have seen some horrific things. Because, as a tank, and those tanks, they're going to be in the forefront of everything. I mean, what are they going to send in first? The tanks, for Christ's sake. When you have a look at it, and so recently I was watching another war thing there on the History Channel, and there was the Grenadier Guards tanks thundering into Germany. Don't know about you, but it brings a tear to my eye. And so then, obviously history talks about that, although it doesn't talk about him by name, but I mean, you see, certainly his name's there and amongst all of that and on the Grenadier Guard website for anybody who wants to go have a look. And so, once again, why was he only remembered for a fucking tractor accident? It's because they made it up. The story of the tractor accident was made up and had to be protected more than the actual sort of amazing history of what he had done. Fuck you, people. And so he comes. So what does he do then? So the history will tell you that he must have met his wife Jennifer somewhere in there. I don't know. Maybe he met her in Britain. I don't know what it was. She was from Kenya, so I don't know how the connection was made to Kenya. But anyway, she was from Kenya. He had met her. He came back after the war. He must have met her in Britain, maybe. Maybe she was in the service. I don't know. But he comes back to New Zealand and he sort of goes work somewhere as a roustabout. Why the fuck would he do that when he's sort of there and he needs to know everything possible about Orowara, about the lie of the land and what it does and its history and blah, blah, blah. And his mother's in charge, His mother's in charge, and from what I can sort of see, his father was poorly, And but his mother was, she was the powerful one. Agnes Rolleston, sometimes called Nancy, or yeah, I don't know. But people talked about her when we came along, like she was a pretty powerful individual. But Christopher, so this woman told me that he was living at the house with his mother in that big house, and from everything I've ever heard, him and his wife were living in the apartment at the homestead, and the old lady and her household and her husband were living in the main house. Well, there's one door that goes, or two doors actually, but really only one, that goes between the apartment and the house. And I remember some of the people in, odd ones, older ones, who came to visit the homestead, and if I took them upstairs, and they would look at that door and say, oh, that must have been where the iron curtain was. And the implication was that there was difficulty between Christopher and his wife and his mother. So, but that's a judgment that I shouldn't make. It's just gossip from people. But this other lady that talked to me about it, she just rang me and she said, you do know that Christopher Rolleston committed suicide? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I've been told that. And I said, I've got the coroner's report, and the coroner's report is very dodgy. It amazes me that a coroner read that report and still came back with a verdict that it was an accidental death. That's because the statements contradict each other enormously, and that is covered in this document that I've done. That's not here. This is talk. So I'm getting to the nub of what got me out of bed to talk about this, and that is the moment of death that you can't step back from, and what makes people make the decision to do that. And so she said he went out in the yard and shot himself. I just watched a movie the other day called Hemingway and Gellhorn. And, they dealt with Hemingway's suicide with a 5-second clip of him shooting himself, and just the screen blanks over and then there's a bang, and I instantly thought again of Christopher. and the decision process, and the decision process is, so there's slow suicide and there's fast suicide. But if you're going to use a gun, there's a moment at which you make a decision, and and there's moments only to contemplate what you're doing. And the problem is that once you've pulled the trigger, you can't step back. And it seems to me that if you're going to use a gun to kill yourself, as apparently Christopher did, the decision process is it truncated? Is that the word? Because, you're out in the yard, you've got a gun, there's other people around, and, you're going to sit there with a gun in your hand contemplating it for a while with the risk that somebody's going to come along, or you're just going to go bang and pull a bloody trigger. And so then think about all that. It's an instantaneous thing, bang, you're gone. And so then you've got to think about what might have led up to it. Well, the first thing that I thought of was post-traumatic stress disorder, and they used to call it shell shock back then. Shell shock was actually something quite different. It was actually caused by the proximity of shells in Passchendaele. Because, a lot of those men were dug down underground and bombs were going off immediately above them. So, yeah. And so, they mentally, they never came back from it. And so, but, mentally, the thing about what Christopher may have seen or not seen or participated in or whatever during the war, I mean, he would fire his guns off in the tank and a whole lot of other tanks there with him, not one tank by itself. And then they would drive forward. They would see the results of what they'd done. They just would, and, there's a sort of philosophical thing about that. And it just seems to me that someone like Christopher, would have looked at all of that and gone, fuck, we did that. Why are we doing this? Why would the men not? When you're driving through, when you're having a war in one place because you're an infantry guy with a rifle, you don't see a lot of it. But if you're driving through it all in a bloody tank, you see shitloads. And so, what those guys went through and what Christopher went through is an astonishing part of his history, and it's an astonishing part of the history of Orawara that has been left out. Oh, fuck you, people. What I'm doing today is I'm going to put it back in. It's going to go back into fucking history. That's where it belongs. Christopher's life and death needs to be considered in the light of truth, not a lie. And I kind of I understand why Mrs. Rolleston and others would have decided to cover it up because, it was considered a shameful thing back then. But, a lot of those men who came back from the war committed suicide. And the reason was because of what they'd seen and what they'd done and what they'd had to contemplate. And they had to contemplate death every day for months at a time. You'd be driving through Germany and all about you would be death. And if we think that that's not going to you'd have to be a heartless bugger for it not to affect the way that you think. And so then here he is back here, and it would have taken, if he was troubled by that, and he would have been, and something dodgy was going on with his wife and his mother, that, there he was, a person who was able to contemplate what he could and couldn't do in a war to try and kill the other side. And then if he was tied up in a sort of a battle, a different kind of battle entirely, between it could be just a standoff between his mother and his wife, and he's caught in the middle. So, it sort of seems to me it wouldn't even have to be that much of a bloody disagreement. But he would still be caught in the middle. And if his wife, Jennifer, had said, fuck this, she wouldn't have said, fuck this. The ladies never swore back then. They probably thought swear words, but they never say them. And so she would have said, oh, the hell with this, Christopher, I'm going back to Kenya. I can't put up with this. And he would walk out in the yard. And, when, the thing about guns, it seems to me that that you're used to having them around. When I lived there, I always had guns around. I knew the bullets were in the kitchen drawer, shotgun shells in a kitchen drawer, and the reason is because you're shooting possums all the time. The possums are a bloody nuisance in that house. They come down the friggin' chimney. One came down the chimney one day when we were there and landed in the fire. Jumped out again, but and what did he get for his trouble? He got a bullet. So guns were just around. So he might have had a gun up there in the stables. Might have just walked in, grabbed a gun, put a bullet in, and shot himself. Very quick. You see, it's a very quick decision. And so but you see, it's not a decision you can step back from once you've pulled the trigger. It's all over. And this is only gonna. I've been talking for 36 minutes, but what I'm trying to do is tell you something that's important to the history of this man, in the spirit of this man. I just having sort of read about him and knowing all of that and having an understanding, as somebody like me who's never been to war can have of the war and what it does to people. And also that house and what it does to people, because it arouses passions as well. But the other thing about his wife, of course, is that she was from Kenya. Maybe she was from a mixture of Kenya and Britain. I don't know. But anyway, suddenly she's in New Zealand and she's stuck in. It's 1953 and she's stuck in bloody Takapau. Well, I can imagine for some people that would be hard work, and that she's also stuck in a world where her husband is not in control. His mother is. And you can't change that because although he's going to inherit it, Mum is still the owner. Mum is still in control. Mum is still a powerful woman. And so Christopher's wife would have felt very outgunned. Talking about guns again, but you know what I mean. And so into the mix is a little child as well, who in fact Mrs. Rollison knows, and Christopher knows that when he's gone, that child's going to inherit this great estate and this big. There's a whole lot of implications that go along with the inheritor of an estate like that, particularly when the estate is represented by something as imposing as Orawara Homestead. Just as people say strange things and do strange things and whatever. And so, Christopher, I just want to pay homage to Christopher in his real history. And I need to say to you people in Hawke's Bay, wake the fuck up. Recognise that this man's real history is much more important than the one that's been made up. Because, to be able to dismiss Christopher Rolliston's life, Sydney Christopher Rollison, to be able to dismiss his life with, oh well, he died in a tractor accident. One sentence. Not fair. Not fair. I'm not going to let you do it. You've done it to me and you've done it to him, and you're not going to get away with it because, communication has changed. And this little video here is going to go on YouTube. It's going to be there. People will talk about it. It will change the history of Central Hawke's Bay. There is a document that I've got to back up what I've said. And, those people got together and they conspired to cover up what really happened. It was a conspiracy. And, in today's world, if they'd all still been alive, the law could be looking at some serious charges against Mrs. Rolliston and the others involved in that house, the people who got together and conspired to not only tell a lie about the life and death of Christopher Rolliston, but pretty much eliminate his fucking history. Not going to do it. And did the coroner know? Well, that was sort of the coroner. That was a month later. They might have covered it up from him, but he must have been bloody blind if he didn't see the anomalies in the statements. Because Jesus, they jumped out at me. and I'm not a trained lawyer. You know, what is a coroner? Is he just some dude that, some sort of bureaucrat that got promoted or something? I don't know. So I've been talking for 40 minutes. I'm going to. I'm not. I don't think I'll do this again. I think I've made the point. I've made the point. Christopher's history needs to be told truthfully. The truth of his history is much, much more important than the bullshit. And, you know, if somebody's going to get sort of a little bit hurt in the process, too fucking bad. Enough, Dennis.